So somebody had recently asked me about my amplifier settings, and I'm a little bit late making this video, but better late than never, just because I finally just got some time to myself for the day and decided to just put this together really quick, and I just realized you can probably see me in the tread plate. Well, that's okay. This is a Mezza Boogie mini rectifier. It's a 25 watt head. It's one of the most versatile amps I've ever used. It can do pretty much anything from like a really tweedy sort of like American football clean to really high gain metal stuff. And I've got it plugged into my two notes, I can never say this, 2 Notes torpedo captor, which is plugged into my Scarlett 3rd Gen 2i2. You don't really need anything too fancy to run an amp like this. I mean, you can run it through a big 4x12, but if you're in a compact area, you can't really be playing your amp too loud. I would highly recommend one of these things. This is awesome. This is a lifesaver. You can just play through monitors or headphones on your computer and pretty much any DAW. I use Logic, and I run 2 Notes Wall Sound to run a bunch of cab IRs that are really fantastic, like coupled with this thing. So for the clean section, it's nothing too fancy. I've got the pre-gain turned down pretty low. I've got the treble turned up and the mid turned up about to noon, just because I don't want anything to be too harsh in that range. But I've got the low end a little bit boosted because it is a 25 watt amplifier. I want to push the low end just a teeny tiny bit more. Same with the presence, just to get a little extra high end chime out of it, but nothing too harsh to like the ears, you know. And then for the master volume setting, I just have it cranked because why wouldn't you? I really like getting the most saturation I can out of my clean channels. So that's on a 25 watt setting. It sounds great. As for like the super high gain stuff, I don't really know how well you can see the dots, but it's on the modern setting. Vintage is good, but modern sounds better for lead work, in my opinion. And the gain is actually turned down relatively low. It's only sitting about like 1-2 o'clock. And normally I'd turn it up maybe like a little bit higher if I was using like an unboosted signal. But with a boosted signal, you want to keep the gain relatively low, just because you don't want to add too much distortion, or else your mix or whatever you're trying to record will turn out muddy shit. And the treble's turned up kind of high. Mids are a bit pushed. They're at about 11 o'clock. 10, 11 o'clock. I like them sitting there just because I don't really like a scooped sound with my modern setting, but I also don't want to get like too lost in the mix. Again, the bass is up just a little bit more than I would actually have it. Here at about 2 o'clock, I could probably push it up a little more. And the presence is what I accidentally pointed at, is also sitting around 1 o'clock, just to like clean up the high end a little bit, but also not make it, fizzy. And you don't want to crank the master volume on the high gain settings, or else it'll sound like abject trash. So if I were to plug into like a real cabinet right now, this would be well over 100 dBs, and you don't really need to record anything louder than that. So just keep that in mind. If you think that cranking a master setting on a high gain amplifier is a good idea, you're wrong. And just because I know somebody's going to ask, this is not like an actual high watt, but is a high watt clone. It's a 50 watt clone, hence the custom 50 label, like marker thing on the front panel. And again, I like keeping the master volume cranked just to saturate the power tube section. And I use essentially the normal like pre-gain volume as like a de facto like a master knob, if that makes any sense. So I don't really hardly use the brilliant volume. I just keep that down relatively low unless I am feeling adventurous or want to split my ears like and make them bleed. But no, this is actually a cool setting. I just don't really use it all that often. Bass is turned up a little bit. Treble not as much, just because this thing can get a little bit harsh in the like 8 to 10K range. So I mean, it'd be really, really good if you're going for something really chimey, like that classic British sound, but that's not always what I'm going for. And just keep the treble down just a little bit, just so you don't like blow your eardrums out. Mids are fairly present, just because again, you don't want anything getting lost in the mix, and the presence kind of makes up like that ultra high frequency stuff that the treble kind of lacks, and you don't want to push too much within that section, just so you can have a nice clean high end without like making the high end like distort a ton So on the pedals, that one's just a foot switch, the Mezza one, and this one's just a tuner, the Boss TU3, nothing too crazy there. We get to a little bit more interesting stuff here with the whammy, Digitech Whammy 5. This changes settings all the time just based off what I'm playing. I really like the harmonizer settings, but if I'm just doing like little dips, then I'll like turn it down to like, you know, a second down or something like that, or for the folding cover that I just recently did. This pedal is actually all the way engaged right now, so it has like an octave up setting currently on this. Moving over to the Boss Super Overdrive, I really don't have this set for anything more than like a clean boost. It's a fantastic pedal for this application. If you're like more into like the bluesy stuff, then you could probably get more utilization than I do out of it, but I just like it as a really good clean boost. It's really reliable. Putting it in front of a Mezza is fantastic, especially if you want to get like really chunky riffs out of it. So I got the settings to drive all the way down, volume all the way up, and then you just like twist the tone to taste, and that's how you get a really good like metal sound out of your high gain amps. And this one is the pedal that I use more in front of my high watt, unless I'm just noodling around. But this is a 5150 Overdrive from MXR. You know, Eddie Van Halen was in a close approximation with the design of this thing, so I've been told, but I don't really know how much I'd buy that or care. I mean, it's just a fantastic pedal all around. You'll notice that the gain is relatively low, but this thing really pushes the gain like big time, so keeping it low and even slapping a boost in front of it like that will do you just fine. Don't really need to push it much past noon if you want to get a good tone out of it. All the dials are pretty much neutral because the EQ on this, I mean, the EQ sweep is a little bit sensitive, but I mostly just take what I have from the front of my amp and like boost and cut a couple things just on the front of the pedal, just to model my sound a little bit more. And as you can see, I really haven't done that much to it. I think I boosted the mids a little bit just to like give it a more crunchy rock tone, but that's mostly about it. And also the input, that's about what you need to get just a bit above unity gain, just so it pushes the front of the amp just a teeny tiny bit more. Moving on to the Boss Super Chorus, this is a really subtle chorus that I have set right now. The EQ, or the effect level is pretty much at noon, so it's not like an overbearing chorus whatsoever. Like the rate and depth are also fairly modest, just so you know, it's not like this really deep detuned chorus or anything like that, but it sounds really nice and it adds a bit of flavor that I like on top of my cleans. Other than that, you can use this to like do pretty much anything from like really subtle detuning and like swirling effects to like really deep like slow dive and LSD and the Search for God type stuff. It's a really fantastic pedal, and this one actually comes with a little bit of an LED mod. It's like a rate modulation mod. It's not like, you know, Keeley modded or anything like that, just somebody did that with the LED, and I thought it was cool. This one is a Dr. Scientist Bit Quest. I have this right now just to be on like a really light bit setting, like a bit crusher setting. Usually this pedal on my pedal board gets swapped out with like an MXR Phase 90 on pretty much any setting, but I've used this for delay. There's a really good infinite reverb on this, and the reverb in general is really fantastic. Really good flanger effect, really good fucking like everything. This is just a fantastic multi-effects pedal to screw around with. If you have the means, I definitely recommend one. And it does have a built-in fuzz if you want to screw around with that too. Over here I've got the Boss Dd7 Delay. The effect level is turned down a decent amount just so it's not too overbearing in a mix with my guitar work, because as much as I do like the effect on this, it is on a modulated reverb setting right now, and the modulation can kind of overtake the tone a little bit, I've noticed, so I just dial back the level so it kind of evens itself out and doesn't completely like dominate my overall sound. I got the feedback turned up a little bit and the repeat rate at a pretty modest level. It's nothing, or excuse me, not the repeat rate, the delay time at a pretty modest level, just because you know, I really like my kind of like eighth and quarter note delays, but anything faster than that is too much like a slap back, and that's more if you're like into if
if you're more into like, you know, rockabilly and country, in my opinion. And it's not a knock on that at all. It's just not really what I'm going for. So I could probably experiment with that a little bit more, but I do like my long, washy, modulated delays, especially paired with this thing, which is the Walrus Audio Slow. And this is like one of the coolest reverb pedals that I've ever used. It actually has a latch setting if you hold the sustain. Whoops, don't know where my fingers are going. And like push down some of these knobs or push them up. And right now I have it set on the Dream setting, which is like a, if you really want to get like LSD and the Search for God type vibes, it's definitely going to be out of this pedal. The X Factor is in the manual. It kind of describes like what it does for different settings. On this, I think on the dark setting it's like an octaver, and on the Dream setting it's like a wavy sort of effect. The depth I have turned all the way down, just because I didn't really need too much of like a warbling effect for what I was recently doing, but you can screw around with that if you want. I mean, this is a really customizable pedal for only having like a few settings on it. There's actually a mix knob, I think I mentioned this earlier, and you can just blend in your reverb with your dry signal, and it sounds very fantastic. So you don't get too much of a good thing out of this pedal at all. Like, it's virtually impossible. The filter adjusts like the tone of your reverb, so you don't get like too much low end in there, because low end will make your reverb sound way too washy and bad. And then there's also the decay setting, which I think is kind of self-explanatory. All these pedals are pretty much mainstays on my board. I like them a lot. I hope this video helped out, and I'll see you in the next one.